One of the things that Jayne mentioned that was a real surprise to me this morning was the number of she called them small companies, under 500 employees. I mean, my standard's a bit lower, but how much of the exports are being done by small companies. And I've got to think that globalization on both sides is affecting part of how this channel is going to change. So I'd be real interested in your thoughts there. Maybe I'll pick on Chris first because he's learning to speak French. But
yeah, really well too, as a matter of fact. The globalization act. Look, I think any well-run company obviously is going to be a good business, going to make money, going to take care of their customers. And so, I don't think you want to overplay the globalization piece. I think Tom hit it right on the head. You take care of your customers, you give them a good offering, you move with them, and you're going to do great. I do think that there are some elements of globalization that we have to be careful about. And Jayne mentioned the consolidation on the manufacturer side. There are global companies like Eaton and others that we're conscious of when we're picking our partners for the future. Everything we talked about, we're not going to do no company is going to do by themselves. So when you're looking at its size and globalization, I think that there's an element of picking your partner to that and picking your winners and your losers. I do think that innovation, on the positive side, innovation and best practices. I think all of us can learn from international companies, even if we choose not to export or engage in outside. For example, in our country, 150 lines per man per day in a hub is probably a pretty good number until you see it happen at 170 lines per man per day, and you can learn a few things. On the other side of that, there's more competition coming in and going out, and so you got to be on top of your game. So, I think there's some upsides and some downsides. I do think that being in the world's largest economy in the U.S., I don't think we have to get too concerned about it. That's kind of probably odd from this panel member, but I think if you run a good business, you're going to do just fine.
Yeah, and again, that comes back to the fundamentals and earning that trust and delivering the value. And
I think it also comes a little bit to following your customer. I mean, manufacturers have done that for years. We're not very global from a distribution perspective. Our aerospace business obviously is, but we have a number of OEMs here based in the U.S., obviously with a lot of equipment going into China. So we actually put an engineering and support hub into Singapore, so that we could be a little bit closer to them. But I think you're right. In that case, it was driven by how we served our customer really on a local basis. They were going there, they needed support, we were able to do it, and across a broad enough range of OEMs to make it economically feasible as well. Not real profitable, but feasible.
Well, there's always that challenge. That's why you guys make the big bucks, So, but what's really interesting is from what you just described, you didn't start off to say we're going to go be global. It's I have a customer relationship we've earned. They trust us. They need help. We got to find a way to take care of it.
And it goes to the services part, that's been talked about. It really is not just whether it's the initial fabrication, programming, design engineering element, perhaps even installation and startup, but longer term, what are the services that distributors can offer profitably, and how that enables you to truly have a much more difficult challenge for anybody that's coming in to unseat you. I mean, because that's what we want to do. You essentially want to gut their capability and own it yourself. And services enable you to both add value and make it far more difficult for somebody to come in and unseat you on price. One
of the things I run into in the part of my life that sits on the academic side is that everybody's talking about sticky customers and switching costs, and services are absolutely at the center of all of that. That somebody can't come in and offer pipe and wire 10 cents cheaper. Well, it just doesn't make any difference. It's just because they'd have to go hire 5 people.
Yeah, and I think the lag, it was talked about before that, no plant engineering staffs. A lot of these customers don't even really have real project management capability, and that just seems like such an incredible opportunity for distribution to step into that and say, well, that factory expansion, I'll play a role helping you manage all of that, or supplying all of it. Getting projects done on time under budget. I think our customers increasingly are having trouble doing that, and it's a huge opportunity to step into.
I think it really takes a very strong relationship with your customer and really understanding their pain points and identifying them and executing on each and every one of them and keep looking for them.
Yeah, and then, by the way, with reward comes risk. And so, and the challenge, and by the way, the NAED is doing a great job of identifying, there's some task force put together. Even in our day-to-day business, let alone when you're doing more service work, aside from the pricing and the labor load issues and things like that, there's risk associated with that. And you all should be very, very, very careful about the terms and conditions and how those contracts are structured, because when a project does go over or something doesn't get there on time, you sure want to stay away from some of the risk that these customers are trying to push back on the channel and all the way back onto the manufacturers. It's come in vogue to shed risk, and nobody wants to have any fault in the chain at all. So be very careful with with that reward, and some of the things we're talking about comes risk, and we should be very careful about that.
On the contractor side of things, this concept of integrated project delivery is getting some traction. It started back at Stanford in 2008, but and it's like the master builder, because we've got 70% of our commercial construction ends up in some kind of litigation before it's done. But it goes right to the heart of this project management thing that Tom was talking about. That seems to me, distributors, if they're willing to take the risk, could actually provide a lot of value in the project management and a lot of this even on the residential side, I would think.
And what was interesting to me is that, in our aerospace business, obviously project management is really important. So, we've got PMI classes being done all the time. And today, it's about 50% aerospace and about 50% from our distribution group in those classes, for the very reason that it's brought up here. But it's also a discipline that is really good for you externally with your customers so that you can add value. But what things are you doing internally that need that same rigor and discipline? Whether it's a new ERP system, starting up a new distribution center, or frankly, even a new sales campaign. All of those are projects. All of those can benefit from training, real good, solid, fundamental training in project management. And we use it now with our customers, but for us, putting in a new ERP system, holy smokes, it's real important to have it as an internal capability as well.
So, Jayne, what do you guys? Do you guys very involved with the project management side?
We are, and I think one of the key elements of developing a highly tuned, executable project is the partnership you have with your manufacturers. So our teams are really committed every day to locking arms and, doing or dying with that manufacturer. And we've also just implemented a new ERP system, and we're looking forward to, having a much stronger information technology platform to manage.
I'm glad
projects.
you said you were looking forward to having more information instead of just having it work.
Right.
So, yeah, that can get very exciting. So,
well, choosing a technology partner is one of the biggest decisions you can make in this.
High cost to change.
Right.
So, as we're talking about all this, I mean, the skills in project management, there's the Project Management Institute, and people can become certified. And there's NAED is investing all kinds of money with their CAP Council and their education foundation. But if I'm an independent distributor and I decide I want to innovate more and get involved, where do I start? Where do I get the education or the knowledge? I mean, is there a right path or is there a wrong path in terms of how somebody starts down the process of this innovation and change?
Well, internally, we're at a point where we have some internal training for project management. We started out with, again, there are a lot of good project management avenues to get the training. I would just offer that even after that training, what you need is a structured process in your business. We call it a toll gate process, so that along the way, not just managing the project, but as a business, you're managing your resources and your capital, the return on your investments and things like that. So I think all of the the areas where you can find project training, there are a lot of good ones out there. Go ahead and get that, get your people trained up on that. But you need to marry that with an internal process that marries, your capital expenditure.
Well, and that kind of goes back to what Jayne was saying, where it's do or die. We actually have measures and we talk after the fact about we blew it or whatever. How do you get smarter?
Yeah, whether it's red teams or toll gates, whatever you want to call it, but you have to marry those skills with a process in your business so you mitigate the risk. We talked about those things. So I would offer you can get the training in a lot of good places, but marry it to a process internally where you make sure you're managing those resources, capital, and that money.
Did you have? So sorry. If you look forward, say about 10 years or whatever, or just the same kind of framework that Jayne had, some of the things I think are still going to be here. Obviously, we're still going to have manufacturers. We're still going to have distributors. Trust is still going to be a critical piece. Are there any things that you think are sort of antiquated that maybe that will leave behind, that people will be talking about? We're
still going to have customers too, right? You left outside.
Yeah, we definitely need to have that. That's the only way people can afford to hire consultants, Neal. It's really important to me.
One thing I'd like to see antiquated is the current government economic policy.
Well, I'm sure they care an awful lot about what we think here, but you're in a very friendly audience. So.
Well, I think it's a great point, though, and Clarence talked about it earlier with the fly-in in Washington in September, is that truly they don't understand the impacts of what they're doing. The conflict minerals legislation, as an example. Now, I don't know how many people have looked at that real closely. I'm sure the manufacturer's side and I'm sure some of the distributors have. This is a huge deal. This is extraordinarily expensive for us, and we can amortize those costs over $1 billion, and it's still expensive. But the impediments that are being put in place to implement social policy through business today is making us increasingly uncompetitive. It's got to stop.
Well, I don't think they recognize that countries all over the globe are acting more like corporations now in competing and attracting business and manufacturing. And the U.S. really needs to think in terms of those perspectives. How can we make this country a fertile ground for manufacturers to come back? Because without manufacturing, without research and development, we're just a service organization, a service nation that's going to.
And the opportunities there, the cost escalation that's going on in China right now is an example. The gap is in terms of overall cost to produce a product is shrinking to the point where no logical person would put an ocean between their factory and their customers. So there's this opportunity. I think there's going to be a push of those manufacturing plants potentially back here, and if there was a little bit of pull as well, it could just be a resurgence opportunity.
Yeah, and before the panel moves on to religion and sports, it is the summary. It's insanity. It is the next one is this conflict minerals thing. It is insane. Everybody in this room, you are breaking the law right now, and you don't know it. What? All of us are breaking some regulation, either new or that's come up in the last 18 months, and we don't know about it. We have six people in our lawyers in our legal department, and we're not that big a company in the U.S. for that kind of overhead. It is insane.